And then it all hit the fan. Everything was calm until I wanted to go on the stream, and then it all hit the fan. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Uncut History. Sorry I'm late. I'm sorry that everything's dark behind me, too. I intended to get everything all in tip-top shape. Nah, universe won't let me. Even when I finish finals and have it all submitted in, universe just will not let me just have a moment of peace. So how's everybody doing tonight? I see we had a lot of people in the chat earlier. I think a lot of guys probably ventured on over to Drink of Crazy's stream, and I'm going to be going over too. What is this Ghost Lore? What is this Ghost Lore game about? Never heard of it. Looks like it has some cool artwork. So this is probably going to be a short stream because I'm mentally all over the place right now. And you could tell I'm practically in my PJs right now. It's just been a... You resurrected for this? Yeah. Yeah, the resurrection, I guess, lasted one day, and I'm back to being blah. So, what we're going to be talking about tonight is the Johnstown Flood. Now, yesterday was the 134th anniversary of the flood. It's one of the worst disasters to ever plague the United States of America, and as a particular... I shouldn't say fond spot. Saying a disaster has a fond spot in my heart. Not something a normal person says. It has it lives rent free in part of my brain. I like that saying. It lives rent free in part of my brain. I think most of you are aware by now that I'm not too far from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. So the Johnstown Flood is one of the big historical events we talk about here up in the sticks outside of Pittsburgh, outside of the Burgh. So let's see. I'm trying to hang in there, skunks. I'm trying to hang in there. So, aside from, well, I'll tell you what happened. So, I decided, okay, I'm gonna take a shower. I'm gonna get some things done. I'm gonna go and feed the dogs, this and that. Dogs were quiet all evening. I'm trying to get them going outside. Come on, let's go enjoy the weather. No, nothing. They want to lay down. 7:50 rolls around. All right, it's time to go to bed. Barking, everybody's having a free-for-all. It's chaos. They want to go outside, in and out, indecisive. They knew. They effing knew. And we are being greeted by the evil cat. You can't see her on the screen, but she's right over here, the evil cat. For those, we were in a voice chat last night, and she just decided she was just going to turn into some type of alien creature. She wanted her attention, and she wanted it now. She's getting it right now too. I pat her. So, all right, that's why I'm all discombobulated. I'm sure it's entertaining people. So, we're going to be talking about the Johnstown Flood. Now, another thing that was throwing me for a loop, there are countless photographs of the damage of the flood. And I'm like, oh, I'll just grab a few and I'll talk over it. I don't know if it's the internet. I don't know if it's my computer. I don't know what the heck is going on right now. But every photograph I grabbed was some tiny little frame like this. It wasn't fully blown up. So I apologize if you're going to be looking at mainly a black screen with a little dot that's an image. Bear with us. All right. Johnstown Flood. God, where do I begin with this story? I guess we start with what the city of Johnstown is all about. So Johnstown's about an hour's drive to the northeast of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Let's say about an hour and a half. It's in the southern fringes of Cambria County, Pennsylvania, and it sits in a very deep valley at the confluence of the Stony Creek River and the Little Conemaugh River. And they merge the Conemaugh River, and for those that like their waterways, let's connect the dots. That merger creates the Conemaugh River, which will flow into the Kiskiminitis River, and then the Kiskiminitis River flows into the Allegheny into the Ohio River, the Ohio into the Mississippi, and the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico. So, food for thought as we talk about what happens tonight. That's how your watershed empties into each other. So, Johnstown was founded along this river confluence. Initially, it was just a modest trading post in the late 18th century, and really it didn't grow until the mid 19th century. The first thing that really made Johnstown grow was the Pennsylvania Mainline Canal. Now, Pennsylvania decided they wanted to compete with the Erie Canal up in New York. They wanted to get some commerce. Everybody was going up to New York to go from east to west. So they decided, let's put a canal similar to the Erie Canal across the state. One problem, the Allegheny Mountains. So you got to go, this is crazy. And if you've actually may have seen a video on the channel about this, what they did was they built it in the 1830s. The canal went from Harrisburg to Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. And at the foot of the Allegheny Mountain, they used a series of incline planes, railroad incline planes, to pull the boats up and over the Allegheny Mountain, and drop it into Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where it can reconnect with the mainline canal. And then the boats would go all the way to the city of Pittsburgh, and eventually it connected into a canal system out in Ohio as well. So Johnstown, Hollidaysburg both grew very quickly because of the canal business, but it didn't take too long for the railroads to outpace the canals. So the railroads come into Johnstown around in the 1850s. They parallel the mainline canal pretty much the whole way across the country, across the state. So the railroads take over the business of the canal, and Johnstown becomes a railroad hub. Now, Johnstown is in the valley, Conemaugh Valley, which is rich in coal and iron ore. And that is going to lead to several coal mines open up around Johnstown, and is going to lead to several iron companies establishing themselves along the Little Conemaugh and Stony Creek rivers. And that really begins to balloon the city of Johnstown. And when we get into the 1870s, after the American Civil War, they start making steel in Johnstown. Johnstown for a short period of time was the largest producer of steel in the country. Eventually Pittsburgh would outpace it, but the Bessemer system was pioneered, was experimented with in the city of Johnstown. So America's steel industry got its roots in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And even though Pittsburgh outpaced it, Johnstown was still a very important mill. And you can see in the background, in fact, in the valley, you can see the smokestack of several of those mills. The biggest of the mills was the Cambria Iron Works. Maybe they weren't doing steel yet. Maybe they're not doing steel yet. Maybe they haven't done it yet. They do steel eventually. Cambria Iron Works. No, they had to have been doing steel by the 1880s. They had to have been. Because, well, about 14 miles upstream from Johnstown, we had the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. And this was a private club that many of Pittsburgh's wealthy were involved with, including Andrew Carnegie. They had to have been making steel then by that point at the ironworks. But why call it the iron? I'm getting ahead of myself. So, yeah, I know. This is another live stream where everybody's going to debunk me. Readout exposed. He doesn't know jack shit. How's everybody doing tonight? You got a fired up readout that's pissed off at the world. I hope you're enjoying this. So you had the Fishing and Hunting Club. A lot of Pittsburgh's wealthy would come up, take the railroad, about a 3-hour journey from Pittsburgh up to Johnstown. And they actually got off, not Johnstown, but they got off at the town called South Fork, and they took about a 20-minute carriage ride up the valley, and they arrived at the Fishing and Hunting Club, which was located on Lake Conemaugh, a 3 mile long reservoir. Now we'll show you a photograph. There's the breast of the dam that held Lake Conemaugh, and if you're seeing my cursor, the hunting club would be right over here. The hunting club's right over here. Now, if you go visit this spot today, you're not going to see a reservoir. I think you can probably guess why. And this hillside is now covered by the village of St. Michael, Pennsylvania. And if you're looking to get to the Johnstown Flood National Memorial, don't go to Johnstown. Look for St. Michael, Pennsylvania. It'll make sense. So the reservoir itself has its roots with the mainline canal. So Johnstown grew because of the mainline canal. That's also where this reservoir came from. And it was meant to provide a constant flow of water to the canal basin in Johnstown. Now, once the railroad came over, the Pennsylvania Railroad purchased the South Fork Dam and kind of left in neglect. In fact, in 1862, part of the middle of the dam collapsed on itself, though there was no real flooding. There was some loss of timber, but that was really the most of it. The reservoir was only really ever kept at 10 feet deep when the mainline canal owned it. Like I said, it was just to provide some little extra water during drought season. Well, in 1880, the key figures from Pittsburgh, I believe Benjamin Ruff was one of them, ended up purchasing the reservoir to make this fishing and hunting club. And they very quickly filled in the break in the middle of the dam. They were using very thin, sod, hay, and just smacking it down with some mud and calling it a job well done. In fact, it might be a little hard to see in the photograph, but you can see the color difference between the original, I want to say it's pure. It's all an earthen dam, but the more stone portion that was put in by the mainline canal, and then you can see the riprap that the Fishing and Hunting Club put in to fill in the middle. It's basically like putting Play-Doh there. And the Fishing and Hunting Club filled it all the way to the tippy top. Now, the dam is approximately 70 feet tall. I believe it's like 900 feet wide. It's massive. Many people claimed it was the largest earthen dam in North America. That it never held that record. I don't even think it was ever close to it, but it still was a pretty darn big dam, and now grossly overcapacitated with water. So in 1880, the Fish and Hunting Club opens. We saw the image earlier. Yeah, these nice, lovely cottages. Now, most of the people were staying in the clubhouse, but several people started purchasing lots of land that they can vacation anytime. Very recently, it was only like 5 or 6 years ago, the National Park Service came into the possession of the tax records on his cottages. Up until that point, we didn't really know who owned what cottage, and unfortunately, I don't know them off the top of my head. Andrew Carnegie didn't own a cottage, nor did Henry Clay Frick, who was another prominent figure in the city of Pittsburgh and in the Fish and Hunting Club. But Philander Knox owned one of the cottages, and they now know that. Philander Knox, I think he became, was it Secretary of the Treasury he became later? I think during the Roosevelt administration? Was that during the McKinley? Wilson was one of them in the early 1900s. So a pretty prominent politician owned one of these cottages. So that's some information has just recently come to our availability as historians on this disaster. As you're probably guessing, the dam wasn't really put together, wasn't repaired with engineers. And there actually was a gentleman in Johnstown that got a little concerned by this. His name was Daniel J. Morrell. He was the general manager of the Cambria Iron Works. He was a little concerned that he never heard of any engineers going up and repairing this. It was like overnight, boom, the dam's fixed, the reservoir's filled. So he's a little concerned because, if there's a issue with that dam and it breaks, it's all coming down here to Johnstown. So he sent up his own engineer, did his own research, and the engineer from the Cambria Iron Works kept questioning, well, did you guys do this? Did you guys do that? And nobody would answer him. They were like, don't worry. And eventually, the Fish and Hunting Club had an engineer, right? Daniel J. Morrell's engineer. And this is a direct quote. You and your people are in no danger of our enterprise. If there are words that keep me up at night, you and your people are in no danger of our enterprise is one of those words. Now, Daniel J. Morrell died in 1885. I don't think he actually was a member of the Fish and Hunting Club. If he is, he didn't really frequent it. There was by the time we get to 1889, where our main events occurred, there was actually only one person in Johnstown that was a member of this establishment. Few people knew what was actually occurring up there. And to this day, we only know a little bit about the activities that occurred at the Fishing and Hunting Club. It was a very, very private enterprise. But let's get to what you're here for, the flood. So that dam ain't gonna last forever, folks. And in 1889, around Memorial Day, well, it wasn't Memorial Day. Yeah, it was Decoration Day, technically. Around Decoration Day, 1889, a terrible storm moves over from Oklahoma, moves across the Ohio River, and pushes into Johnstown and throughout the eastern seaboard. So you can find that this storm system caused damage all across the country. This is just the most prominent story. I heard a bump in the evening. I'm going to assume that was one of my cats. And since I'm distracted, let's see what's going on in the chat. What's going on in chat? Yes, there probably were some wild parties. I know that they tended to we have photographs that they were dressing up in Oriental attire and staging plays like kabuki plays and stuff. Yeah, it was interesting. The little bit that we know about it. Oh, a quiz. No, I won't be evil. I just went through a bunch of finals. I'm not going to be evil to my chat. So moving on. Nope. But I'm spoiling everything. So this is a good map. This gives you a layout of the Conemaugh River Valley. Off to your right is the Lake Conemaugh, the Fishing and Hunting Club, the South Fork Dam. Then you can see the South Fork of the Conemaugh River goes to Southport, Pennsylvania. Southport. Oh my God, this is going to be one of the streams of all time. And then you're going to see there's a viaduct. This viaduct was actually built, and you can see an image there. It was actually built for the Allegheny Portage Railroad. That was that incline system for the mainline canal. And again, got a video on it. It's a whole episode of Retracing History. It's one of my favorites I ever did. And in fact, we also have a interview with one of the park rangers there going over how the incline planes were constructed for the Allegheny Portage Railroad. So I'd appreciate if you check them out. I'll make sure to drop those links before we're done with the video. And then you can see the Conemaugh River winds through Mineral Point, winds down. I think it's like 1,400 feet that it's descending. Then we go through East Conemaugh. It just says Conemaugh. I call it East Conemaugh. Through the village of Woodville and then into Johnstown itself, where the Cambria Iron Works is. And then on the other side of the stone bridge that carries the Pennsylvania Railroad across the Conemaugh River, across the confluence, you're going to have the little city of Cambria City. Then eventually it'll go all the way out to St. Hollow, Nineveh. It's today called Seward, Pennsylvania. And if you're off the map, then you'd be at New Florence, Pennsylvania. And if I keep going north, I'm going to dox myself. So we're not going to do that. So anyways, this gives you a layout of the Conemaugh River Valley and our scene for disaster. Our scene for disaster. So this storm system moves over Johnstown and the entire Conemaugh Valley over Decoration Day. It is pouring buckets. And on that evening, the president of the Fishing and Hunting Club, Elias Unger, is going to return to his cabin. He owns a cottage on the, am I looking at it right? On the east side of the reservoir. The west side is where the Fishing and Hunting Club is, but on the east side, he has his own private cottage. And he's only been president for about a year. He's the second president of the Fishing and Hunting Club. I think he was returned from Harrisburg, if I'm not mistaken. And he noticed that the reservoir is a little swollen, but doesn't think anything of it, until he wakes up around 7 in the morning the next day, and he finds that the reservoir is rising it's basically a foot per hour. The reservoir is increasing in height. Yeah, so the Fishing and Hunting Club had put in one drainage system on the east side of the dam. If I can show you the photograph again, it's off to the left here. They had one spillway. And they had put fishing grates in, so their valuable fish didn't swim out. They, believe it or not, they trucked all this fish to stock the reservoir every year, no less. in boxcars, in special boxcars designed to hold water. Yeah, that's what you can do when you're really rich in the Gilded Age. You can ship fish by rail to this remote fish and hunting club. So they don't want to lose their valuable fish. So they had all these grates there in the spillway. There had been discharge pipes put into the dam by the mainline canal system, but those were gone before the Fish and Hunting Club even purchased it. It's believed that Benjamin Ruff or somebody before him sold them for scrap. So there's no way to drain it through tunnels underneath the dam. So that one spillway is the only way you can control the level of the water. So Unger ropes in a team of Italian immigrants who are working to making a sewage system, digging a sewage system for the new fish and hunt, the new clubhouse. So they run over onto the breast of the dam and they start working at the spillway, trying to free debris from the fishing grate. There's wood all piled in. They don't have the manpower to do it. And by noon, water is starting to top the breast of the dam. So yeah, it's very likely that the dam can collapse at any moment. So what starts happening is they start sending warnings to the city of Johnstown. There's actually 3 telegraph warnings sent throughout May 31st, 1889, warning Johnstown that the dam is becoming unstable and may likely go. Each time that message is delivered to Johnstown, nobody reacts. The reason being, it's not the first time that somebody has said the dam is going to burst. It's the equivalent of Boy Who Cried Wolf in the Conemaugh River Valley. People have been saying this for years, going back to the mainline canal days. Oh yeah, the dam's going to break. Yeah, whatever. The one time you're least expecting something to happen, that's exactly when it's going to occur. That's at least what I normally say. When you're least expecting something to occur, that's when it's going to occur. And there's still disputes. I believe it's anywhere. We believe it's anywhere from 245 to 315. There's a dispute currently. The South Fork Dam would give way, and 20 million 20 million gallons of water are going to be shoved into the Conemaugh River Valley. It's the equivalent if you put the Niagara Falls into the Conemaugh River Valley for a half hour. That's the force of water that was pumped into this watershed. And very quickly, the water rolled through South Fork, tore up the rail yard there, took out the watchtower. 4 people were killed in South Fork. The floodwaters then very quickly went around the Oxbow, hit the viaduct, the giant stone viaduct. Debris clogged in the arch, and very briefly, it became a second dam essentially for a few moments, completely flooding the valley behind it, so much so that the pressure carved through the railroad cut, getting around the stone this stone viaduct. The viaduct then crumbled under the pressure of the debris. The floodwaters continued into Mineral Point, wiped out the little village. 13 people were killed there. It continues rolling down. It's kind of hard to see here. Oh, we can zoom in. If you look here, you'll see former bed. You'll see former riverbed. The flood was so powerful, it carved a new channel for the Conemaugh River. And by this point, there's estimates that the wall of water is 70 feet high here in the gorge, coming down toward Johnstown. Knocks out one of the Pennsylvania Railroad bridges. And then just before it enters East Conemaugh, there was a freight train. Now, there were several trains that were on the line that day. Because of the flooding, the Pennsylvania Railroad kind of had to stop everybody from moving. So there were these several trains throughout the Conemaugh Valley just stuck, waiting for things to be told. The Day Express, which was a daily commuter train out of Pittsburgh, was stopped in East Conemaugh. It was actually divided into 2 sections in the rail yard in Conemaugh. There was approximately 20 different locomotives that were being stashed on standby in the roundhouse because they can't really do much. So they're trying to keep the fires going. They can't do much because the tracks are washed out up ahead. There was a local freight that was manned by an engineer named John Hess. And Hess never saw the floodwaters, but he saw what he described as a mist, and he felt the rumbling, and he kind of put 2 and 2 together what was happening. So he started reversing his locomotive back toward East Conemaugh, tied down his whistle, tried to give some warning to the people below. The floodwater hit Conemaugh, destroyed all the trains that were in the yard, including the Day Express. And it's one of them weird things. It's like like you hear like in a tornado. Everybody who's in, because like I said, the Day Express was in two different consists because they'd been broken up in the rail yard, it hadn't been put together yet. If you're in one consist, if you stayed in it, you died. If you stayed in the second consist, you survived. It's one of them weird things. Everybody, I think it was everybody who stayed in the first section was killed. Everybody who ran from the second section was killed. Like, how do you react to a situation like this? Approximately 300 people were claimed in the town of Conemaugh. The floodwaters burst through Woodvale. There was a barbed wire company, the Gontier Iron Works, just that divided Woodvale from the city of Johnstown. So now you're throwing barbed wire into the mix. Hold on one moment. I'll be right back. I'm texting something. All right, I'm back. The floodwaters, they got all this debris. They got locomotives. They got trees. They got barbed wire. And I believe it's like, I think it was it. 337. Same. I think they've been disputing over. There's always been disputes over time, but it's 337 to 407. I have somebody communicating with me right now. I apologize. This is the stream that ends Redoubt Productions. So the floodwaters by 4 o'clock reached Johnstown. The buildings caused the flood to break into 3 distinct paths. One is going to rush south down into the Stony Creek. Another is going to go basically right through Main Street. And a final one's going to crash into what's called locally Westmont Hill, or sometimes Yoder Hill. And essentially that causes a backwash, basically like a tidal wave smashing back over the city of Johnstown. And then all the floodwaters are going to press toward the stone bridge. When the floodwaters entered Johnstown, they were approximately 40 feet high. I think they're down about 20 feet when they hit the stone bridge. And all the debris is going to pile up in the archways of this massive stone bridge. And impressively, the bridge holds. The bridge was only a year old. It was built in 1887, and it withstands the force of Niagara Falls. And it's still there today, folks. I should have pulled a photo up there. It is still standing today. It's one of the most eerie things you can ever see. So all this debris is building up, and essentially it's almost like a whirlpool's happening in Johnstown. All the extra floodwaters are coming down from the valley, going across what was Johnstown, hitting Westmont Hill, and then recoiling back toward the stone bridge. So it's grinding all the debris down. And then either a stove overturned or a lantern, something overturned with a flame. The debris around the stone bridge caught fire. And there are many descriptions of people smelling human flesh being burned that evening. One guy believes that he saw at least 1,000 bodies go over the stone bridge at night. Normally, I'd say it's hyperbolic, but in this story, it's not. The floodwaters would continue beyond the stone bridge, but they had lost their power. Debris would be carried through Cambria City, all the way through what is now Seward, Pennsylvania, and debris would be carried all the way down the watershed, eventually into the city of Pittsburgh. And believe it or not, the last body was found, I think it was like way down the Ohio River. It was like, I'm talking like almost like in Kentucky. I don't think it was found in Kentucky, but it was found. The last victim was found in like 1907, all the way down the Ohio River. That's how powerful this flood had been. All right. Let's go back to the chat. So I'm going to show you a few photographs. These are provided by the Johnstown Flood Museum, not the Flood National Memorial. There's actually 2 museums dedicated to this disaster. The National Park Service preserves the lake bed of Lake Conemaugh and the Fish and Hunting Club. That's the Johnstown Flood National Memorial. And then in downtown Johnstown, there is the Johnstown Area Historical Association run this museum. Jaha, I would not be opposed to having on the channel someday. That'd be a cool place if I can get him on as a guest. So we'll just kind of skim through here. In total, 2,209 people were killed as a result of the Johnstown flood. And I like this image. I just realized there is a National Guardsman standing in there. Oh, look at that. I wish I can zoom in on it. You see there part of a boxcar. The B and stands for the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. Two major railroads intersected at Johnstown, the Pennsylvania Railroad and the Baltimore and Ohio. And both of their lines, now those companies don't exist anymore, but both of the rail lines they built, they're still in operation in Johnstown, surprisingly. The Baltimore and Ohio line doesn't really, I think they run like once a week today. Looks like that was a parsonage at one point with the cross. It said that there were, I think it was like 40 parts of 40 different homes were stacked on this one little structure near the stone bridge. This is the Schultz house. It's one of the most heavily photographed buildings from the flood. I think there's like 6 or 7 different photographs. There's some photographs of people actually leaning on, like leaning off of the giant tree that had gone through the window. Oh, well, 6 people in there survived. And then, like I said, there were many different locomotives that were caught in the flood. If you go to the Pennsylvania Railroad Museum out in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, they actually have a pair of wheel axles that were unearthed in the ground when they were renovating the Pennsylvania Railroad in Johnstown, and they believe it's from the flood because it's this bent axle and where it was located. I think they unearthed that like 30 years after the flood, and it's now on display at the Railroad Museum. Cambria Iron offices survived. That building is still standing today in Johnstown. It's a beautiful building if you ever get the chance to see it. It's right across the street from the Flood Museum. And that's Main Street. A good bit of the center of Johnstown remains standing, though heavily scarred. It was a lot of the smaller villages that made up all these bundles of sticks. A lot of these people that worked here, they were immigrants that were working either at the Gontier Iron Works or working at the Cambria Iron Works, or they're working at the working with the railroad. And what they did over time, which didn't help for the flood, what they had done over time was they took the slag from the ironworks and extended the shores of the creeks. So they made the creeks more narrow so they can put more temporary housing like some of these here. And you can see some of these temporary houses were just thrown like toys. And you can see there's a whole area here. Nothing's left. You can see it's all just shoved into the center of town. The scale of destruction from this flood, I mean, the only way we can probably relate to it today is thinking about Hurricane Katrina. It's the only way I can really describe the destruction. But even then, it's just in disbelief how the houses were tossed like toys. The Galveston hurricane would ultimately surpass the Johnstown flood as being the deadliest natural disaster in American history. And quotes around natural disaster calling the Johnstown flood a natural disaster. This is the remains of the St. John's Roman Catholic Church. It caught fire during the flood. I think we're starting to see some duplicates. And there's the debris field that we mentioned, a very good view of the debris field in front of the stone bridge. And that's actually some photographs from the Cambria Iron Works. Now, normally I would end this on a downer. You think this would end on a downer for all the lost lives. But the reason the Johnstown flood is so remarkable is that how devastated the Conemaugh River Valley was and how quickly it came back. It only took a matter of a few days for workers that survived that they decided we're going back to work. we're turning the furnaces back on because we must rebuild. So they got the furnaces working in a matter of days after the flood. They were able to build temporary trestles within a week for the railroad to get from Pittsburgh back to Johnstown so they could start sending supplies in. I think it was a detachment of the 10th Pennsylvania Regiment. They're part of the National Guard. They were sent out for any possible looting. And though there are a lot of fanciful stories of looters, in reality, it was pretty minimal. It was pretty minimal, the looting. Uh, remarkably, I believe that like typhoid, which of course was a big panic, the typhoid, scarlet fever would break out because of the unsanitary environments, was kept comparatively low to other disasters in the wake. They actually end up getting what they called the Oklahoma. There were several different temporary housing they gave to the victims, the survivors of the flood. What they ended up doing was they were almost like Sears and Roebuck houses, but just one. They were tiny houses essentially. There was 3 different companies that did it. There was one they called it the Oklahoma House, and they were just these simple one-room houses that they were able to ship in, build up. And many Johnstowners lived in those houses for the rest of their lives. In fact, so much so that one of the Oklahoma houses still survives by sheer accident. And they had built onto it over the years. And nobody knew it was a house from the recovery effort until it started tearing down and realized, yeah, it is. And it's restored, and you can go see it at the Johnstown Flood Museum today. And there's another photograph of the Schultz house. Now, of the 2,209 victims, only 2/3 were identified. 1/3 were not. It's 770 were never identified, and that's still quite a large amount. So what they ultimately did was, for them, they put them on Westmont Hill in what's still today there, Grandview Cemetery, and they put them in an unknown plot. Little trade trick. There's 777 headstones in the unknown plot. Notice I said there are 770 unidentified people. So they put in like 7 extra headstones because they want to keep it uniform. So there's 7 graves out there that aren't actually graves up at that unknown plot. But anyway, in any case, 1/3 of the victims were never identified. 99 entire families were wiped out as a result of this disaster. 99 entire families. And I can go on to how many men lost their wives, how many wives lost their husbands. And in one case, I forget the name of the family, this one woman, she lost her husband, her father, and several children. They were all gone as a result of this. Well, I'm sorry that you had to go to bed listening to this. I don't know if you want to be listening to this before going to bed. That might cause nightmares. But hey, thank you for tuning in anyways. Thank you for tuning in anyways. Now, you might be asking, so what became of the Fishing and Hunting Club? Because this sounds like negligence. Well, no cases were ever successfully brought against the Fishing and Hunting Club. The club closed immediately after the flood. Andrew Carnegie set out and began his Carnegie Library system as a result of the flood. This is the start of his philanthropic work. You could, in one way, can say, man, he had a change of heart. Another way can say, man, he's trying to cover his tracks, isn't he? So the club closed because of the flood, but they never had to pay a dime for damages as a result. Now, this disaster did set a precedent, did start changing some of the legal work when you do come to these accidents, when it comes to liability. So in a way, this does change how we use liability in court systems today in the United States. But nobody had to pay for this disaster. It was an act of God, which was also used, I believe, by the coal companies that owned the slag dams down in West Virginia when they had a flood in 1972. It's like if history repeats itself. It's like people don't learn from the past. Again, I don't want to know what your Dreamtime adventure is going to be like after you just listen to a story about how 2,209 people died from a faulty dam. This does remain the deadliest dam failure to ever occur in American history. So it's still up there in the rankings. You'll see the flood. You'll see the Johnstown flood. Always mention a lot of history books. It was the tragedy of the last quarter of the 19th century for America. It was well photographed. It was highly publicized. And again, if I would have prepared better, I got several books downstairs. Do I have it? No, I don't think I have it downstairs. I have an original music sheet to raise for. There was all these different ways that came out. The ideas how they're going to raise money to give to the city of Johnstown to rebuild. One of them that they made the sheet music, and it was supposed to be a piano song about the flood. It's printed, I think, like 1890, and I have it somewhere downstairs. I used to have it in a case, but I don't know where it is. Darn! Wanted to bring that out. Do I have the Johnstown Flood books up here? Oh, I do. Hold on one moment. I can see it's shining. Let's be honest. Streams that are prepared aren't as cool as streams that are impromptu, right? Show and tell with readout. So, yeah. Yep, I got one of the books. What year was this one done? I'm going to try to be a little careful. I don't want to hurt him too much. They have many of the similar images we saw in the front. I want to see what year this is. Oh, man, there's a lot of images for this. Doesn't give me a copyright year. Let's look at the other one. Yeah, this is getting really boring, I know. Look at my books. Spencer likes his books. Okay, yeah, this one is dated 1889. You can see it right here. There we are. Yep, 1889. So you can see that they were publishing histories of the flood mere months after it happened. It was one of, if not the most well-documented news event in American history for the late 19th century, and kind of set the benchmark for how the American press would cover calamities, for better and for worse. So that's the story of the Johnstown flood. Now, like I said, this disaster, like I said, I just have a fond place in my heart. I don't want to say that. It lives rent free in my brain. And the reason is, I don't know what got me into history, but I believe it was the Johnstown flood. And the only reason is, I believe I was 4 years old. My parents and my grandparents went on like a family road trip to Johnstown. And I remember being at the Flood Museum. I didn't know what it was about clearly. But when you go in the back of the Flood Museum, there's this huge wall. And it's basically to replicate the debris field of all the debris shooting out if you were in front of it. And a combination of that, and they also have a topographical map that lights up. It's like every 5 minutes they have a show, and it shows the course of the flood. Those two things, whatever reason, wired my brain in a strange way that it's still wired today. Ever since then, I was all into things that happened before my time. It didn't take long after that I was taken to Gettysburg, and that really blew my interest in history wide open. Got into the Titanic after that, and it just kind of snowballed to the nutcase that's in his pajamas talking about the flood right now. Yep. All started with this. I've been to the Flood Museum and the National Memorial countless times. I always try to take friends who don't know about the history. I'm always eager to take them and give them basically a tour and show them how the flood started at the dam, how it made its way through the valley, and tell them the stories of those that did survive. I apologize I didn't go into too many of the survival stories, but I mean, there's some harrowing stories to read about from this calamity. Now, I would like to say that this was the only flood that hit Johnstown, and it never happened again. Oh no. Guess what the nickname of Johnstown is? The Flood City. It's nicknamed that not just because of the 1889 flood. Johnstown always has had floods. It sits right around a confluence. It's in a valley. So there were floods even before the 1889 flood. Usually they were just the water was coming over the riverbanks. In 1936, torrential rain and an early falling of the snow led to what became known as the St. Patrick's Day flood, which is a whole other topic for another day. The St. Patrick's Day flood is not just just about Johnstown. It is about the entire Pittsburgh area. It's about most of Pennsylvania. And in fact, a great YouTube channel named Scott's Odyssey did a video lately on the St. Patrick's Day flood. Now he's not, yeah, and of course now I can't find it. Now it's not. He doesn't talk about all the flood. He just talks about how it pertains to Raystown. Yeah, here it is. I'm gonna drop a link. I'm gonna be dropping a link right now to Scott Odyssey's video. So if you want to learn a bit about the St. Patrick's Day flood as it pertains to Raystown Lake, please go and seek that out. Yes, and Evelyn Music's bringing another one. So after the 36 flood, what they did, the Army Corps of Engineers built what they call the flood control system. So they built these huge walls around the Stony Creek and the Little Conemaugh, and they said it's a flood-free city. And then, I kid you not, what they describe as a once in 600-year storm hit the Conemaugh River Valley, flooded 6 small reservoirs, which broke. All of them subsided and broke, and flooded the valley. Now, the water level was nowhere near the previous 2 floods we've been talking about, but it still did damage. In fact, it was deadlier in terms of Johnstown's casualties than the 36 flood. I believe it was they're still not certain. It's anywhere from 75 to 85 were killed as a result of the 1977 flood. My grandfather has a story behind it. He actually was working in a coal mine nearby during the flood, and one day they were outside the portal, which the choked river was right out of, and this huge log came by. So he went over, grabbed the log, because he's like, that's some fine wood to make a table out of. And that's exactly what he did. And that table of driftwood from the 77 flood is still in his house to this day. And there's also a story that there was a little village from the 77 flood called Robinson. It got completely devastated by the 77 flood. So my grandfather and his buddies, they went to what was Robinson to help one of their co-workers clear out their house, essentially, because it was being condemned. And he ended up with several firearms, and they pretty much assumed it won't work again. It's mud caked. Well, he got one working. There's still mud in it, but he got it working. He hasn't used that for many years, though, so it's more about the novelty than anything else. Yes, my grandfather is a legend. He is the man, the myth, the legend. So, and I thank you, I thank you, Jonathan, for flattering me with that. I thank you for that. So, that's going to wrap it up for the Johnstown flood. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be streaming next week. And the reason being, I don't really have a topic, and I might be going out and doing an event. So I don't think I'm going to be able to stream next week, but who knows? Maybe things will change, and if things do change, I'll let you guys know at the last minute. You'll get a post, and if I do, it'll likely be a preservation shout out. But the plan is for the week after, for June 15th. The plan is we're going to have the NGP project on, and we're going to discuss Pennsylvania's role in the Spanish-American War. 2023 is the 125th anniversary of the Spanish-American War. So we're going to talk about how the Pennsylvania National Guard was sent overseas to fight against Spanish forces in the Philippines. And we're also going to talk about how the NGP project came into existence. You don't normally think about living historians doing stuff for National Guard units, especially at the late 19th, early 20th century. So I'm very eager to get the host them, and hopefully that'll start multiple interviews with different speakers. So hopefully this is the start of a new era for Uncut History. That is the plan. Fingers crossed. Am I planning to stream on 4th of July? Is 4th of July a Thursday? 4th of July is a Tuesday. I don't think I have any plans to stream on 4th of July. If you guys want an Independence, like a special Independence Day stream, I wouldn't say no to it. I don't do anything Independence Day. The Declaration of Independence was signed July 2nd. not July 4th. July 4th is just the other, it's what all the normies like to celebrate. I celebrate July 2nd. Thank you very much. So, normally this is the part of the stream where I shout out another shout out, essentially, and another piece of culture. But considering we got another stream current right now, and I know most of you guys in the chat are watching it right now, you know I'm linking it. So be sure once we're done here, if you haven't done so already, be sure to flip over the Watch Drink with Crazy's Ghost Lore playthrough. I'm going to be joining her shortly. Hopefully he doesn't stop the moment I stop. That'd be very embarrassing. This would be a very embarrassing shill then. Oh, I forgot. I was going to plug that one video. Give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to give that one video where I interviewed the dude. Yeah, the dude, the guy. You know, the guy. No, I didn't interview Elijah Wood. Dead air. Welcome to dead air. So the link that's about to be dropped now, that's called How They Built the First Railroad Over the Alleghenies. It is about, it's an interview with one of the park rangers at the Allegheny Portage Railroad. And that was that incline system that helped the mainline canal get from eastern to western Pennsylvania. And keep in mind, what does this have to do with the Johnstown Flood? The reservoir that became Lake Conemaugh was a reservoir for the mainline canal. So it has a lot to do with it, sets a lot of it up. So if you want to learn about how they built the first railroad over the Allegheny Mountains, be sure to check out that link. But I think it's time. We're going to play the music. It's happening. There it is. The music's playing. We got to have the after party. An indie game called Driftwood was released today. Is it about floods? I'm curious. Hey, we went for the whole stream and the evil cat didn't invite me. Okay, that's worth celebrating. Messaging me. Why do people keep messaging me? Yep. So, if we don't go live next Thursday, the week after, there's going to be a very special episode of Uncut History. The plan is it's going to be me having the NGP Project on as host to talk about Pennsylvania's role in the Spanish-American War and all about how the NGP Project came into existence. So that's the plan. Hopefully, we'll see you guys at the next edition of Uncut History. Oh, remember, I'm done with finals. I can edit, retrace, and history videos again. So not this weekend, but in the future, you should be seeing more regular videos from the weekend in the month of June. It's going to be a great summer. I can feel it. Or it's going to be the most cluster F of all summers. Who knows? Till then, subscribe to Readout Productions. If you want to go the extra mile supporting me, go to my Ko-fi link and buy me a cup of coffee for tomorrow morning. I'm going to need it. Have a great night, folks.